Hello, I'm Michael Sullivan, and I'm the CEO of Life Model Works. Life Model Works is a fascinating organization, and we are kind of at the nexus of brain science and a Christian worldview coming together that focuses on how God transforms people into the image of Jesus Christ and how people mature in general. And I'm interviewing my colleague today, Dr. Jim Wilder. Jim is the founder of Life Model Works and has written a number of books. I don't know, probably over 20 books in your lifetime, Jim. And it's great to see you and great to have you on this interview.
Yes, it's good to be here and sort of pick up how we're landing with the latest of these book projects.
Yes, you've written a new book. You wrote it in the first 3 months of this year, 2019, and it's going to be published in the spring of 2020. And so we're excited about this book. It's called Renovated. The subtitle is God, Dallas Willard, and Churches That Transform. So you have a history with Dallas Willard. Tell us a little bit about this gentleman.
Yes, well, early in my training as a counselor, my first supervisor was Jane Willard, Dallas's wife, and she introduced me to Dallas along with the rest of the staff there. And they actually attended a church that was across the street from the counseling center where we were then operating. And so we had this kind of Dallas enriched environment that we were growing up with. And Dallas was working very much on how do you get the church to change? And we are working very hard on how do you get individuals to transform and change. And so putting these two things together really highlights the sort of the two aspects of the life model. One is that the neurotheology involves all the things that God says about us, and whatever God says about us has to be true for all people. And then the neurology side, everybody has to learn to serve God in the human brain. And so how do these two things fit together? Whenever they overlap, things got really interesting. And so we've had this interaction, dialogue back and forth over the years. And trying to settle on what the core factors are in transformation.
And Dallas was a brilliant man. He was a philosophy professor throughout his career, and he wrote some wonderful books about transformation into the image of Christ. And he especially focused on spiritual disciplines and their role in how we grow and change. But before he passed away and went to heaven, he kind of got more aware of the neuroscience piece that you've pioneered. So talk about that intersection a little bit.
Yeah, and our desire to kind of discuss this, we actually created a conference on spiritual maturity. And the question is emotional maturity and spiritual maturity the same thing? Do they overlap? Do they have, how do they fit together? Because there's very little discussion going on in theological circles. And frankly, most people's idea of spiritual maturity is I read the Bible, I pray, and I go to church. And if you want to be more mature, you just do those things harder. But it didn't really produce character very much. So we brought together this conference in 2011. And it was supposed to be the beginning of this dialogue, but at the time, Dallas was actually in the process of undergoing medical tests that eventually revealed the cancer that he died from. And so the development kind of stopped right there, between the philosophy side and ours. And we've been working ever since then at kind of how would we write up where that discussion would have gone, which is where the book ended up now. And I'm not sure I'm answering your question, but that's kind of how we're getting to where we are at the moment.
When you think about spiritual disciplines and brain skills, or relational brain skills, we call them, how do you see them coming together in the Christian life?
Well, the interesting thing about the disciplines is that they're a strategy, and strategy is driven primarily by the conscious mind, which is dominantly in the left side of the brain, and relational skills, which are part of identity and character, are driven primarily by attachment, who we love, in the right side of the brain, the identity side of the brain. So if we could put together the two things, strategies and the skills that develop character, so that we could strategically develop character, that would be a pretty good blend, I would think. But it would have to work the way the two sides of the brain work. We'd have to have the good plans and the good ideas, and the spiritual disciplines really are a way of making some room for God to, show us a better way, and to actually challenge some of our human ways, like fasting. Um, uh, you know, we have to back off some on our human ways to solve all of our problems to make room for something else to grow. But to grow something else, we also have to develop love. And really, very few of our strategies have pointed themselves at how do we learn to love God better.
Yeah. One of my good friends, a highly educated church leader, said, I studied all these things at seminary. I never had one course on how to love. And at the life model stuff, with the life model stuff, we're trying to rectify that, really, really learn deeply and tease out, what does love look like? How does it happen, right? So you love a bunch of people through the years that have been partnered with you in this journey in the life model. So you have some folks you want to talk about a little bit?
Yeah, well, the interesting part of love is when you start looking at how God describes it as, for instance, chesed, which is a very hard Hebrew word to translate because it encompasses so much. Yet what it focuses down to is a relationship that can't be separated, which we would actually call in brain science terms attachment. Turns out that's a central process in the brain in terms of character formation, and it's not really been the central process in church. I mean, we come and go, we drift, we replace people with other people, and so these permanent attachments that would be eternal, that God building a people, have actually been growing up around life model works as other people have come in and said, you know what, something isn't working as well as it could. I'm not seeing the kind of transformation in my life or with the people I'm helping I want to see. And so uh, one of the people that has attracted those kind of people to us, of course, is Dallas and Jane and the network that they've been around. But we've also had a network of people working on relational skills that have come in, and we were able to invite quite a few of them to this conference with Dallas. And we've actually had a chance, you and I, to interview a bunch of them. And I would just encourage people to look at these other interviews, and you'll learn from all around the world of the amazing group of people that are looking for a more relational Christianity.
Yeah.
So wouldn't you say that's the core of it, a relational kind of Christianity?
I would. In fact, I have a conviction that we are in the beginnings of what I would call a relational revolution. Just from my observations and reading through many years and observing the church world and church history. And you wrote a book with Marcus Warner called The Solution of Choice, which is a fabulous little book, very quick read. But it's so brilliant because it talks about the ripple effects of the Enlightenment upon Western culture and upon the Western church. And so there's been, in my words, kind of a dehumanization going on, forces at work, I think cosmic forces as well as human forces, to get us to be disconnected, from people and from this experience of Hesed love. And so I think that the culture, as well as the church, is going to push back now and say, we've got to return to some of these more humanitarian values of human relationships and being fully human. And to be fully human, we have to know what love is. So I'm so excited to be a part of Life Model Works and to be a part of your life and working beside you. It's just a real privilege.
Yeah, it's really great to be here. Dallas always used as sort of a test of our spiritual maturity. Are we loving our enemies yet? And
Mhm.
if we think of this in terms of attachment, it actually is a place where we not only test it, but we also develop our spiritual character by learning to see others as God sees them, attach to them, whether they happen to like us or not,
Yeah.
and bring the kingdom of God closer to them through our lives. And that's what I'm just delighted to be a part of with you.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, it's just like the Lord, right? Well, while we were enemies, he loved us and sacrificed for us. And so he pushed through that enemy barrier, and we're called to
Exactly.
do the same thing. And I like the way you say it. It's like we don't really have any enemies. It's people who think we're their enemy. And we have to do things that help bring those defenses down and let people know we really care.
Exactly.
All right, sir. Well, I guess we'll end our little chat, and God bless you. Have a good day.
Thank you.
All right.